Hi everyone, my name is Jake. I'll be narrating this life update email. I apologize in advance. I'm having some technical difficulties on my end, so this will be recorded in one take. It probably won't sound super professional, but I'll do my best. Please bear with me. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, Alex's life update email. May the games begin, and may the odds be ever in my favor. Also, give me a round of non-existent applause for your narrator, the mildly impressive Jake Voss. Insert non-existent applause here. After finishing the last life update and arising upon the following morning, I edited and said update, which takes so much time every time, XD, and then sent out said update. I know, a riveting twist to the usual turn of events. From there, I took Dad out to Five Guys because I was given a cancer gift card to the place and it seemed like treating my father to a burger would be a good use of it. But then, unlike tradition, we played no table tennis, and for some reason, I can't remember. Or for some reason, I can't remember. Anyway, after that, I did D&D prep work, read philosophy, and then took a bath. Then Johanna and Grace came home, so Grace, though having promised Johanna fun, decided fun meant sticking Johanna in a corner with nothing to do, while she paid only moderate attention to me as I tried to help her with math for the next hour. And to top it all off, I'm fairly confident Grace actually learned nothing, so, I feel like that all went well. From there, the two aforementioned females and I journeyed, picked up Neo, and then did all the singing on the way to D&D. I've been told my singing skills have improved, and such was the unanimous consensus of the musically gifted people in the car, so I believe it to be true. Though I lack a fundamental explanation for this state of affairs. Also, it turns out state of affairs is a very technical philosophy term that ties together bare substances, aka mere particulars, with properties, aka universals, and is itself, at least according to the analytic tradition, the base unit of all reality. So just, in case you too have been using state of affairs lightly, you are now aware of your error, so you can instead intentionally continue to use it lightly. Because that's what I'm going to do, and you're welcome, XD. Anyway, we made it to D&D, ate the food, had our first player death as Hayes unfortunately passed. Also, my players have now seen my hyperbolic geometry map, and they were very underwhelmed. Apparently, I'm the only one that gets excited about functional math that breaks the parallel postulate. But regardless, you can now see it. There's a picture. Then, once D&D was over, we watched Blue Lock, which is a good anime. Oh, and also, I forgot to put my car in park, so it rolled down the street and up into the neighbor's front yard. So yeah, that was a big close, but thankfully there didn't happen to be a car parked in its path, so there were no consequences. Yay! Still freaky though. And with that scare, the night ended. The next day, I woke up earlier than I desired, so I tried to fall asleep, but with marginal success. I then basically did nothing of significance until Phonime, not sure about that one, and then taking a nap because, lol, I was still tired. After that, I did MBTI research. Johanna came over for a drive, and we had a very good conversation, and then Grace, me, and her walked over to Five Guys and rapidly quaffed fries because Johanna had to get back, and thus we had only a small amount of time to eat said fries. But still, even rapidly consuming Five Guys fries are good fries. From there, Grace and I stretched each other because we've been doing that. And then I ate food, went to Ratio, and socialized, which was a touch painful, but, every once in a while, you've got to put in the small talk effort if you want to not fall into obscurity. Then I got home, went on a lovely night walk before watching an episode of Arcane, nice, with the family, and then did some philosophy before going to sleep. The next morning, likewise, began with philosophy until Joe came over and we just hung out and got canes. Now that he lives so far away, curse ye Joe's kin for moving him. we've decided to be more intentional about trying to meet up and hanging. After Canes, we went on a lengthy walk in which I gave a beautiful summary of all the 8 cognitive functions. Probably my finest exposition yet. And I think Joe only remembers like half of it, so I am sad. But still, it was a good walk and some decent conversation. After that, Braden came over and we did some CDH battles where my deck won 2 out of 5. So I lost, but not by much, and the games were all pretty close. Then we played a few games of a form of Magic that's called Plains Chase, which was a cool twist. I liked it. Once Braden left, I went on a night walk and listened to some Personality Hacker, and upon getting back, I watched Arcane with the family, and then I started reading the book on flow by the guy who invented/discovered it, and it's been mildly informative thus far. The next morning was Thursday, so I was hungry the whole day. I called with Liam and Joe to sort out some D&D stuff, read some more of my flow book, listened to more MBTI podcast, worked on some Google Docs. Oh, and then I received this beautifully packaged gift from Cheyenne. Look at this. Oh, there's a picture. Look at this. Very pretty. It's a book about some war person. It's called Unbroken. And like everyone I've told about it has been like, oh, that's a really good book. So I'm probably going to read it sometime here, but I'll wait until a point where I lack the motivation to read boring things, because while I still have said motivation, I would rather be productive, even if it is a fantastic book. I then taught philosophy class, where we finally finished Module 1 and started on to the good content. From there, Joe talked about D&D with Neo a lot, and I was bored. And then I read through some of my docs along with Cheyenne's letter, and then I went to sleep. The next morning, I just stalled after waking up a bit too early. The Karina came and picked me up, and we drove to the hospital for chemo, having a very good conversation along the way. However, once there, to my surprise, this happened. There's a picture. A host of ye old high school carolers populated the spiral stairs and entertained us for like 45 minutes or so. So that was kind of fun, a little weird, but overall pleasant. Karina was a great chemo buddy once things got started, except for the fact she does not excel at upholding a one-sided conversation. Like some people know how to just talk, but Karina, yeah, not really. XD. Still, she did her best, and I appreciated the honest attempt, and she has come a long way from pre-trip Karina. So, we're getting somewhere. Once chemo was through, I definitely wasn't feeling great, but I nevertheless decided to go see a movie in the theaters with John, Neo, and Sydney. Because I was like, well, I'm either sitting watching something at home, or I'm out sitting and watching something with friends, so I might as well. But it turns out that reasoning is quite flawed. I don't care to detail in this particular case why it was quite flawed, but the point is, it was flawed. So yeah, I made it through, but I definitely didn't feel great, and I was quite grateful to be home once I made it there. Also, the movie itself was kind of meh, so it was good for a Christian movie, but still so-so. Once I got home, I took a bath, felt nauseous, and slept. So unfortunately, this round my chemo started at like 1 in the afternoon, which meant that, per the laws of short-term fasting, I couldn't eat until dinner this time around, and that, partnered with definitely the worst nausea so far, I didn't throw up, but I definitely didn't feel great. It meant that this day was rough. I decided reading some of my flow books, but it was hard to concentrate, so I mostly spent the day watching various things with my family and not doing much before I just went to sleep. As a general rule of thumb, probably the most accurate measure of how I'm feeling is how productive I am, because I really hate wasting time and not doing things with my life. Thus, the less meaningful things I do, the worse I feel. Just a piece of insight into my psyche. That is very, very TE. The next day at church, I had a lengthy conversation with Jeremy Bridges and then a brief conversation with Johanna. Joe wasn't there for a reason unbeknownst to me, and so I carried the conversation of our ragtag social group with the things I had been learning, which I think everyone was at least mildly interested in. Then I went to D&D, but really started to feel bad during the session, so as soon as I was able, I went home and took a bath. Eventually, Mom bestowed upon me Qdoba, and we all watched more Arcane together, which was good. And then, in an unforeseeable turn of fate, the event turned into one of the very few deep family talks we have had about why certain things have gone poorly and how to fix them. See, my mom, my dad, and Grace are all primarily FI users. So basically, they all have the same problems, hence I spent like 2.5 hours walking the family through what was happening. why it was happening, and what could be done to fix it, based off MBTI theory and the peer-reviewed psychology I know. This was definitely a delicate talk, but I think I handled it well. And now we have 2 pages, front and back, magneted to the fridge. So hopefully they can remember what I said and actually put it to use. We'll see if it actually changes things, but still, I'm glad I got to mediate the issue. I'm genuinely pretty good at doing so, not to pat myself on the back too hard. But also, by the time we finished, I was super tired, so I basically just went to bed. The next morning, I woke up feeling quite a bit better. I spent a bit of time brushing up on my knowledge of ENTPs, and then met up with Jake, for approximately 3 hours, and he sponsored me Chipotle for my time. It was a good conversation, a bit exhausting. I don't know why, but I always feel tired after talking with Jake, but definitely good, and I think he'll be able to use the info I gave him to level up. After that conversation, I did some philosophy study, and then Neo and I left early for the Jameses to taste the legendary caffeine ramen cooked in Red Bull. This was an activity Joe put together, which didn't appeal to me much, but you've at least got to try this stuff, XD. And yeah, it was trash. But hey, at least now you know. From there, we had real food, played D&D, and the players got their own pirate ship. Then we watched the Shigiri arc in Blue Lock, which is my favorite arc because I'm particularly Shigiri but less cool. And that was great. After that, we talked for a bit, and then I drove Neo and I home because I was tired and wanted to sleep. The next day, I spent a good amount of time talking on Discord. I then had Phoneme, tried to play Beat Saber well, but instead played Beat Saber poorly. I then, having nearly run out of the IKEA chocolate, so integral to my happiness while consuming philosophy, chamomile tea, and IKEA chocolate, I'm telling you, that's where it's at, I decided I would spontaneously hit up Joe and see if he would drive a total of 5 hours with me to restock my supply. And surprisingly, and to his credit, he agreed. So we drove to IKEA, which he had never before been. So it was a novel experience for him, and caught up along the way. But also totally ran out of topics to talk about. XD, that's the one downside to knowing someone really well, is you lose the conversational intrigue that once existed. Unless you're an ENTP. And then we walked through IKEA. I got him the Swedish meatballs, whose greatness had been greatly exaggerated by my childhood mind. And then we looked in all the rooms, got to the end, ate cinnamon rolls, almost left without buying chocolate, which would have been hilarious, XD. But then I remembered my entire purpose for coming as we were leaving the building, so I purchased 10 bars. And then we just drove back singing to good music. I introduced him to some of the new Matthew Parker songs. Once we got back to Joe's house, Joe decided to call it there, and thus I just drove home and chilled. I was going to watch this nefarious movie, but after the whole IKEA run, I was socially tired, so I decided to skip it, as the movie didn't really greatly interest me anyway. Other than that, I just did little things the rest of the night. Stretched with Grace, had Discord conversations, studied philosophy, and ate chocolate, etc. The next morning, I enjoyed more philosophy and chocolate. I wrote in my docs some and had some big brain realizations. I did phoneme, took a nap for 2 hours, but not because I got bad sleep, just because I was feeling tired. And then Mom made a pseudo-Qdoba queso, and Grace and I, mostly me, consumed mass quantities of that while watching Comey Can't Communicate, which is Grace's favorite anime. I then drove to Liam's place, where, before coming, I resigned myself to not being productive. So the time was good. Me, Alan, and him got a Mary's Mountain cookie, which was way too much sugar if I'm being honest, XD. We played some Smash Bros. And an old as dial-up Naruto game, and also watched the first 2 episodes of an anime Alan had read the manga of back in the day. Like, objectively, nothing was accomplished, but I think I did fairly well at being content with the meaninglessness of it all. Still, I actually need to do something more meaningful with my life than that. If a night where we eat a cookie and play video games is the definition of good times, we are all heading toward, I'm not sure about that one, then I think I'm going to go insane. I can tolerate it for a brief amount of time, but especially right now, I need things to matter in a way that's fairly consistent. It's honestly fairly exclusive. I'm realizing ambition and discontent are 2 sides of the same coin, and so I need to make sure I keep flipping heads or else life could get rough in the future, XD. Anyway, just a little tangent. The point is the hangout with Liam was successful, albeit boring, and I learned something about myself. The next day, I studied more philosophy. My lower back hurt fairly significantly, so Dad was kind enough to try and help me fix it. And whatever he did help, just not all the way. I then had fondue and releasing my lower back pain, maybe due to a lack of exercise, because that was the only thing I could think of that was really missing from my life right then. I decided I would go on a lengthy walk, and man, that totally helped. First, because walks are great, but also because I think it was an exercise thing. Since then, my back hasn't hurt nearly as much. Anyway, I went on a long walk, listened to personality podcast episodes, bought some Christmas gifts, and carried them back, then read more philosophy. After that, Ben came over, and I discovered he had moved out like a week ago. Yeah, I actually didn't know, XD. See, he leaves a lot, so not seeing him around isn't really odd, and I don't know, I guess just out of sight, out of mind. Ooh, ouch. So yeah, Ben has officially moved into the house he bought, but he stopped by for dinner and it was good to see him. Mom also made us look through some of David Wade's hand-me-downs, and so it was like clothes Christmas, which I was largely indifferent toward because cool, some new pairs of jeans. But Ben was very excited as apparently all of them are like big name brands and stuff. So yeah, mostly Ben cared, but it still made it a semi-exciting event because he cared. Then, as that ended, I went over and taught philosophy class, and for once, Joe was actually excited about what he learned. Yay, XD. And then it was super misty out, which was big cool, literally and figuratively. So we decided we would all go get Wendy's and then sit around the fire at Neo's house and drink hot chocolate. Hence, with a bit of trial and error, that goal was achieved, and my butt got very cold and wet, but it was a good time XD. Then we all just stayed up till 2, talking about nothing particularly important on the couches in Neo's living room. The following morning, I woke up, ate food, read some of my flow book, and then began the long saga of sitting. Noah, being a virtuous and good man, arrived on time at my house, but Benj and Johanna, being vicious and evil, arrived late. Thus, we rushed over to Neo's house and sat down to begin a 12-hour movie marathon of The Lord of the Rings, extended edition. And see, you must understand, I have never read the books, and I had only seen some of the movies, and not in any coherent or orderly fashion. Thus, in effect, this was my first introduction to Lord of the Rings at the age of 22. I know, you may boo and hiss all you like. Here's a picture of us at the movie marathon. See the attachment. So yeah, Neo decided he would enforce this watching upon me, and while originally I conceived it as something akin to torture, I must say the whole experience turned out pretty good. For one, he prepared bags of pomegranates, and I ate 3 of those, so that definitely buttered me up. But also, the movies were well done, I must admit. They were long, but they had great characters, very impressive world building, and a good narrative arch. So, you can't hate on Lord of the Rings too much. Plus, I didn't start feeling pent up and antsy until the last 4 hours or so. So even the long length of sitting wasn't too irritating. So yeah, it was good. We took walk breaks, which was super necessary. And I got to eat food, and overall, I'm very glad I went. That ended around midnight, and thus I walked back home with Noah, Benj, and Johanna, where we parted ways, before I decided I would like to walk some more, because so much sitting. So I did that, and then once I got back, I read some. After reading, I had a ginormous realization about myself and the social arena, which I think will remedy many a thing, but I'll have to see if it is so after I put it into practice. And that's largely it. Today, I did some philosophy reading and worked on some D&D and stuff. I hung out with John, played some Magic on the grass, and talked. Then I settled down and wrote this. That's the latest as far as events go. The only other big thing worth mentioning is that come the 21st, I'll know whether or not the ABVD chemo is working or not, and hence, whether it's likely I'll live or not. And so some prayers for that day would be well appreciated. It's not like if the ABVD isn't working, I'm guaranteed to die, but my odds of death go up quite significantly. How significantly, I don't know. The survival rate is given for the whole regime, not just the first part of it, but I do know if the cancer isn't responsive to ABVD, the likelihood that B-CHOP takes it out isn't super high. Plus, just saying it, B-CHOP is a much more nasty chemo, so I also just don't want to go on that stuff. Anyway, the point is I reserve the right to be depressed come the 21st, and should the news be bad, though I also reserve the right to not exercise my right, XD, that's the big day where I get to know things, so all good thoughts, actions, and prayers are requested to be directed at that temporal location. All right? That's all I have to say. Until next time.